Oh, man, that's a really good question. The question was, when making a pick, how do you value draft need with upside? And I think you got to use them all as guidelines, and you put those things all in place, and you allow the decision makers to be able to use all those things to be able to go out there and make the best pick for the Atlanta Falcons. And I got a lot of trust in what Terry Fontenot and his crew does. I got a lot of trust in our coaching staff. I got a lot of trust in our analytics department being able to create those guidelines for us. So once we do those things, you put those values on the marker, and then you out there and you just go. You make the best decision for the team. Hey, Lindsay. Sorry. Taryn, there's always clear goals, and like I don't want to come up here and tell you guys a story. Last year we came out, wanted to get a quarterback. That was a really clear goal for us. This year we've obviously got to increase our pass rush like we did towards the end of the season. So we'll definitely have an eye for those guys. Here there's a lot of great rushes in this draft, and we look forward to evaluating those guys and be able to put them up to the test against everybody else.
You added a bunch of pass rushers last year, and you talked a lot about the versatility that you require up front.
Yes.
Move guys around. Does that carry over to offense and your philosophy there as well? Just that versatility, the ability to use those guys different ways?
The versatility definitely carries over when you're talking about offense or defense. You know, you're talking about those hybrid players, those guys that can play receiver, play a little running back, the Bijan Robinson type of attitude, the things that guys that can do anything, whether it be a wide out, whether it be receivers, whether it be skill positions. Obviously, the only position that doesn't matter for is the O-line. They got a block. That's up first and foremost, but we'll always create versatility across the board when we talk about our guys. That's a very good question. The VR training is just definitely taken off to a different level. When you're talking about the VR training, the well-documented Jaden Daniels program that he's done, some of those type of different things, some of the young guys using it as a tool, anything that's going to help those guys develop faster, I think is always good. I think it's something that you can always incorporate what you're learning. I think that people have to have an ultimate buy-in when you're talking about that room, that quarterback, that position group. I got a lot of high feelings for it. You're always going to be innovative. You're always going to be able to do those things. That's what the Falcons will continue to be about, and I really feel good about moving forward with any type of thing like that, particularly when you're talking about some of the VR training. He has not yet. He's definitely looked into it. He's definitely explored it. We've definitely explored it as an organization. He's one of those guys that hadn't put the toe all the way in yet, but he definitely knows about it. It's definitely been some of the conversation that we've had with different people, and we'll get a feel. Man, you took me back. When you were 32 years old, as a head coach, you thought you had all the answers. And I came up here and I was able to tell all these guys what I was going to do. And now you learn to listen more. You get more guidance. You get more people around you that can support you. You're able to take things in a little bit more and be able to get your answers out and be able to go out there and have better answers in order to get to the best answers for your organization. And it becomes more about the organization. And like everybody's always asked you, are you ready? And you never know till you get into those moments, are you ready? And what we want to do right now is move forward, be the best version of ourselves, be able to listen to all the people that we put around us and be able to have all the great answers for us. I thought it should have been illegal 3 years ago. No, the tush-push play, I was never been a big fan. There's just no other play in our game where you can absolutely get behind somebody and push them, pull them off, do anything to be able to use it. I never really understood it and why that was legal, so I'm definitely going to be one of those guys voting against that. Yes, Greg Beater's not going to like this answer, but you always got to have a few more staff members just because of how the league is transpiring right now. The development, the growth, people moving on. There's no better example than where I've came from in LA about the staff development and people moving on, being able to develop people within the building at the same time while you have your staff. So the staff size has grown. You know, when we were in Tampa in 2002, we had 4 defensive coaches. We have a lot more than that now on that side of the ball. So, and it's all because of the staff movement, trying to create that continuity that you want to have in order to create this long-term success. But there's a healthy line. There's definitely guidelines that's got to be formed, and I love that and how we're moving forward to give guys opportunities to be able to do great things in this league.
When you talk about the more pass game coordinators, there's more titles now. Why do you think that is, and what's the benefit of that?
You know, it's the same thing the college game did a couple years ago when you talk about why there's more titles. You know, obviously to have these guys ready to fill those positions once people move on. You know, obviously we got guidelines and rules you got to follow. You always got to interview different people. You got to be willing to go outside the building. You got to be willing to stay inside the building. I think those things, from a business standpoint, just make sense.
A lot of pass rush.
As much as you've done different teams, different positions, are there trends
I don't know if it's changed. I think the players' versatility have changed, right? You'll hear coaches all the time and people saying got different views of it, but it starts up front, whether you're talking about offense or defense, and it's just become a different mindset because you can have rushers from the second level. You can have rushers from the third level. You can have protectors from the backfield. You can have protectors from the O-line. You can have a run game that starts just about anywhere. When you talk about even wideouts gets gotten to that game is with the versatility of all. When you just talk about different players from different teams. And like you can go through all the examples in the world on the versatility that we've created across the board, whether you're talking about a receiver being a runner or a runner being a receiver. But at the end of the day, starts up front. A lot of those things, you found different ways to be able to get those things accomplished as you go in coaching. What, excuse me, say that again? You know, Kyle Pitts started his role last year, and we already got him out there in some of our pass downs, able to get him going on our third downs. And he's always going to have the added pressure because of how high he was drafted, right? So we want to be able to get the young man out there and be the best version of himself. And we'll always make the right decision for the Falcons, and we'll always make the right decision for us in order to get him going. So we'll have to figure those things out. And obviously, when those things happen, he's shown some spurts of greatness, and he shows some things that desire more. And we'll find a way to get the best out of him at all times. And that's our job as coaches.
You mentioned so commonplace.
Yes.
Do you still need like deep answers as to every transfer decision or every transfer decision a prospect made? Like, just spend a lot of time.
I think that's changed a lot. You know, it's become, like you just said, you talk about the transfer and the transfer portal. I mean, it's become a commercial, right? So it's hard to judge guys for jumping in the transfer portal and what reasons they do it for. So now it's just become more part of our scouting department. I think our guys are able to move accordingly to find out what school they went to, what were the reasons. You know, I don't know how old you are, but when we did it back in the day, it was because of, you know, some over-the-top reason, right? Now it's become a little bit more normal, and I think the guys kind of adapt to that part of it. And when guys move, you're able to follow those guys. You're able to get more answers, more people to talk about them. You're able to get more things from them. You have different reasons. It's kind of the moving up situation. And I think it's become a little bit more normal than it used to be.
Raheem, you mentioned Jaden Daniels from the VR1. The success he had this year, you think that's where this is moving other young quarterbacks are coming to the league?
It's a copycat league. You know, obviously, when you talk about the virtual stuff of it all. And I think everybody will try that or have an option of it, or to be able to put that out there in front of their guys to see if they can do it, if it translates. But Jaden Daniels is a different guy, right? You know, he has a different process. Everybody has a different process. You got to find out what process fits best for your quarterback, and you got to be ready to go out and willing to do those things. You know, I was fortunate to be able to watch Bijan in college, and you've seen this dynamic player. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to come here to a team that drafted him, and he's still the same dynamic player and just getting better. And I don't know what the limits are. We just seen a running back just take over our league last year and win a Super Bowl, and Bijan has a lot of those qualities that running back has. And we look fired up, and we're fired up to coach Bijan every single day. I think the league goes in cycles, you know, and I have to say yes, you know, where we're going, right? You know, Bijan, Saquon, all of these guys, the league kind of goes in cycles, and it kind of goes in that kind of a pattern. So I'd have to say the value is definitely increasing. Yes.
Talk about what your friendship with Josh means.
No, it fires me up to just watch, you know, Penn State football with James Franklin leading it at all levels. You know, it goes way back to our time at K-State together. You know, obviously got a really close friendship there with his family, got a really close friendship with him. I was able to support him a little bit and go down and watch him when I had the opportunity to, always cheering for him on Saturdays or whenever they play. Just fires me up to watch Penn State go and be able to watch him lead Penn State and do some of the great things he's done.
I've kind of seen older players coming in the draft, like you mentioned earlier, you know, transfer portal, things like that. How do you think the evaluation of, like, you know, those older guys has kind of developed, you know, throughout the years? And how do you kind of, you know, see, you know, when you see a guy like 24, 25 coming?
You just get more of experience. You know, I think that's become more the norm. I think it's probably a little bit normal now, more normal right now, obviously because of COVID. People got extra years, things of that nature, so you'll have older players coming into it. You're seeing a little bit more mature people, mature players, people with more experience. All those things are great, particularly in our sport, right? Different than all the sports. In this sport, you want to develop a little bit, and we got a chance to watch some of these guys develop and grow into their bodies and be able to be great. Cam, what's up, man?
Going back to defensive line, you talked about that being a priority. When you look at this class, a lot of talent, a lot of debates of production versus traits, and not guys having a little bit of both. Where do you go in that debate in terms of traits versus production?
I'm going to be led the right way. Terry Fontenot's going to do such a great job of putting those lists in order for us to evaluate, giving the chance to put in front of our coaches. He's already got it in front of his scouts. We've already been through all the stuff that we want to do from our scouts. We'll get a chance to listen to those guys. We'll get a chance to listen to everything that goes into it. How do they fit our ethos? How do they fit our play? How do we use these guys? What's the strengths? What's the weaknesses? All those things come into play, analytics, everything, forming guidelines for us. I look forward to this whole process. It's a fun deal, and we got to go get the right players to ultimately be great for the Falcons.
Raheem,
That was a very good voice right there, strong. You did.
looks like you're wearing a Falcons jersey right now. Who you repping?
No, it's not a jersey. It's actually just a. Got to rep the Falcons, man. I'm repping Arthur Blank right now, bro. Yes. Man, you named a lot of really good football players right there, and we'll continue to add guys around them. We'll continue to add that flexibility. We actually got Ray McLeod last year, who came in and did a really good job for us last year. We've got some guys that we brought in last year, and Casey Washington, and some of these other guys that we look forward to being able to be more of a contributor for us. But we've got a lot of really good players and a lot of really good spots. And we are taking some really positive strides on our offense side of the ball. But you never stop adding at that position, particularly when you got a guy that you can add to, particularly when you got a guy that will give you, throws all around the board and across the board, and you got to be able to add to that at any time.
Terry said that the plan as of now is to move on the roster. Raheem Dean is on the team. Is there any scenario
Michael Penix is our quarterback, and Michael Penix will continue to be our quarterback. We stood there last year and we talked about looking for that guy, and we believe we found him. And I got so much confidence in Michael Penix leading us into the future, and I believe our whole building does, and I believe our fan base does, and I believe our owner does, that we are really excited about that young man. Definitely disappointed what happened and how we ended last season, but we got a lot of really good things, a lot of positive thoughts for us moving forward and how we want to go out here and try to win ultimately. Mike, what's going on, man?
Said at the Super Bowl that he played through some shoulder and elbow injury. Did that catch you by surprise?
No, I wasn't really as locked into the Super Bowl probably as most. I'm more involved into the game and watching the productivity of it all. But, for us, those are questions always that you got to ask Kirk. We go through our process every single week of who's on the injury report. We go through our practice and how we practice. We go through our practice with our player development program and our stuff and our measurables, things of that nature. So those are questions you got to ask Kirk.
Last one.
Could you talk about how your successor with the Rams, Chris Shula, did as his first year?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of that.
Can you just talk about how your successor with the Rams, Chris Shula, did as his first year?
Oh, man, my guy. Always a great chance to brag about your guys. And, I was so proud to be able to watch Chris Shula, watch him develop, watch him do some of the things that we did last year, but also watch him be able to develop in some of the things that he wanted to do. Watch him be able to go out and draft other rushers to be able to form that pass rush they had this year. Chris Shula is a great young coach, a great young prospect. I'm sure he'll be standing at this podium at some point for you guys in the future.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
You talked in the past about wanting to bring in players that fit your ethos and the culture and the building. Now that you've been with Raheem for a full year, has that ethos changed a little bit now that you're trying to incorporate the new coaching staff? How has it changed from the previous coaches to this one?
Well, we look at everything and every single year, and we're all about we're process driven. So we're always focusing on the process, and we're always looking for ways to adapt and improve. And so when we look back at and have our after action reports, so how can we adjust these areas? So I would say yes, we're always evolving. And when we talk about ethos, it's about bringing in the right types of players and players with the right makeup. And that's the cool thing about being here at Indy. We had 4 hours of interviews yesterday, we have college scouts that spend a lot of time on these players to figure out that part. Are these guys going to be the right fits? Because we feel like we have a good culture and we have a good locker room in those areas, and we want to make sure we're adding really good players, but they got to fit that part. But to answer your question, with Raheem, and anytime we bring in new coaches or new staff, we're always trying to evolve and adapt as best as we can.
Terry, your time with the Saints, they didn't get a successor behind you. Factor in your decision.
I see your shirt. What's that? Is that Mardi Gras or something on your shirt? What is?
Saints Block Party Podcast.
Okay, got it.
Did that factor into your decision with last offseason having a quarterback for the present, but also for a quarterback for the future in regards to the draft?
Yeah. Look, that's critical. At the end of the day, when you talk about building a team and building it the right way, you got to have, it's the most important position in pro sports, in my opinion. It's the most important thing. And the way, if you look at the history of the drafts, the way it works, the last time we had as many quarterbacks as we had last year was 2020. That draft when you had those quarterbacks that came out of there, and then you can have a draft where you don't get a starting quarterback out of it. So you just have to make sure when you see a quarterback that you believe can be a future franchise player, you have to do it. And that's the vision for that, and that's how you have to operate.
Terry, with that being said about quarterbacks, how close is the NFC South as a whole to being more competitive with your guy with Bryce Young?
I think it's competitive. I mean, you look at the teams in the division. You just said it with Bryce Young, with ours. I mean, you look at every team. It's not when you play those games, those in-division games. Those are hard games. Those teams know you well, and those are tough, competitive games. So I think we have a very competitive division.
Terry, when it comes to the backup quarterback position, do you feel like Kirk could be a good mentor in that role for Fontenot?
Well, look, Kirk handled that really well at the end of the season, and obviously Kirk's he's a really talented player. He's a great man, all those things. So, and again, he handled that role well at the end of the season. That's the plan at this point.
Terry, we didn't ask you about the 14 players from the University of Georgia who are at the combine and 2 from Georgia Tech. In the past, we talked about putting up peaches on the board. Got another 25 players from high schools in Georgia. Just what is that like for having Bert's local ground for your local day, kids to scout and maybe help out the team there?
Yeah, a lot of good players. We actually met with some of those Georgia players last night, and a lot of really good players. Like you said, not just the University of Georgia, who's obviously one of the best teams in the country. They've done an unbelievable job, and then also just being from Georgia. I love youth sports and high school sports and all that, and getting to get out and see those young about getting to spend time with those players.
Are y'all still doing the peach thing?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We always know that those players that are our hometown guys. Yes, sir.
Do you still believe that Kirk can be an effective quarterback in this league? And how much does that injury, I think you said he had a shoulder, how much did that play a role in having a second?
Look, Kirk was on the injury report leading into the Denver game, and he wasn't on the injury report. Outside of that, we're only aware of that particular week. We talked about it when that change was made. It was a football decision. It was based on football decision. There wasn't anything injury related. I'm sorry. Can you? I can't quite. That's a good question, and I think you always have to be adapting to the landscape of the league. You're always adapting, and yet there are always core values that you have. And up front, you have to be good up front. When you walk in there and you got a big physical offensive line and you have a big physical defensive line, it's going to always make a difference. So I don't know those areas, but up front, you got to be big and physical. Yeah, I don't know. I would say maybe some of the things that are going on in the college game, as you see it, and you see those things making their way to the pro game, and how you have to adapt in those ways. But again, we're always going to be adaptive, but you better be good up front.
So if I were to talk to you Monday, and I said, hey, was it a successful week? And you say yes, because of what? successful?
Well, we're here to gather information, and that's what we're doing. We're spending a lot of times, we talked earlier about all these interviews, these formal interviews with the players. We're to gather information in that way. Usually you can spend time and see people face to face and talk about your roster and those things, and so you want to have that. But it's really about, we're still in the gathering information phase. So I would say it's a successful week if we go in with a plan to gather as much information as we can, and that's what makes it successful.
More important, 40, the medicals or the interviews?
You said the 40, the medical. So the medical is critical, right? So I would put getting all that medical information is really number one in that. The 40, nowadays you can have a guy that blazes the 40 but doesn't play fast, and then vice versa. So we focus more on play speed. We also get different numbers nowadays with the GPS and all those things. We can really measure those things in different ways outside of just running a 40-yard dash. So we look at those numbers because you do have the apples to apples. What's up, man? So we look at all those numbers, but I would say the medical's critical, not just the workouts. We're going to look at the other numbers, and the interviews are critical. You're spending time with those guys, and you think about, when you think back to different interviews, sometimes you get that blink reaction. Just spending 18 minutes with a guy, you really get a good feel for him, and vice versa. So it's all a part of the process, but the medical is critical.
Finally for me, when it comes down to it, you mentioned the GPS speed, the medical. Can they play ball with like the gut, the determining factor when you get the trigger on whoever you guys select?
Well, like I said, we have the board set right now from our February meetings, and that's just with the college scouts, boots on the ground. They spent all that time on the road gathering all the information that they can. They know these players really well. They've been scouting them for a long time, and you set the board based off football. Now you have to say discipline. As we continue to gather the information, we assess the intelligence, we meet with the players and really get the background and the makeup, we get the medical. All those things are going to factor in, but it still comes down to football, and that's where we always have to focus on.
Terry, for the last several years, the belief is that the running back has been a little devalued, but you lost in a high picking running back last year. The Eagles, the Ravens, the Packers invested heavily. Do you see the running back coming back in prevalence, or is it not a quarterback?
Man, we have a lot of respect for that position, and man, with Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, our running back room, I wouldn't trade it with anybody. And so we think it's critical, and it depends on who the player is. And probably the reason it hasn't been is because when you look at drafts, there's certain positions that you usually only the hit rate is really high in certain rounds and it's really low in other rounds. Running backs, historically, you can hit at any point. There's an undrafted free agent running back or a running back that shows up at a rookie camp that ends up being a good player every year. So that's probably why some people would say it's been devalued. But then there's certain players like the teams you're talking about, like a Bijan Robinson, that are just completely different animals, and they're just take the position off of it. Bijan's a special player.
You've drafted a couple of corners that are under 5'10" over the years.
Yeah.
That's a rarity. What are the traits that you look for in the evaluation process of the draft as to what makes a corner under 5'10" a viable guy to draft?
Yeah, good question. And there's always rules and measurables and things that places you don't want to reach. But at the corner position, what are the critical factors? Your cover talent. Can you play coverage? Can you tackle? And can you take the ball away? And so if you have a player that is a shorter player at whatever, but do you believe in him as a tackler? Do you believe he can cover? And can he play bigger? You know, so even though despite his size, because you also have some bigger corners that don't play big if they're not tackling anybody and they can't go up and make a play on the ball. Doesn't matter. So we more assess. We're going to look at the measurables, and you want to have an awareness of it so we know that this guy doesn't fit the prototype of this position, but then it goes back to football. Can he cover? Can he tackle? And can he make a play on the ball? So that competitiveness, that makeup is critical.
In an ideal world, do you also hope that guy can do something on special teams in the return game, not just be tackling, but return?
No doubt, and not just a return game, but something like in this days, whether you're a gunner, whether you're a vice, like you always, that's another phase of the game that's a critical phase. And so every player that we bring in, outside of your interior lineman or your O-line and D-line, you have to be able to do something in the kicking game. You want to go?
Sorry, a couple years now into the NIL era, how has that sort of impacted the way that you evaluate players, maybe tolerance for adversity and all those sorts of things?
You know what's really interesting about that? Now when you look at players, you're used to looking at a player's profile and you see he's been at this school 4 years. Or it was more unique to see a player that's transferred. But now you can look at a player, or we were talking to a player last night that's been to 3 different schools, and he's 25 years old, married with 2 kids. So it's just a different level where you're used to seeing these 20-year-olds that only played 3 years at one school. What I would say the scouts do a really good job of, because the challenge that you have now is you have different, when a scout goes into a school and they're gathering information about a player that team has had them for 3 years, they recruited them, they've had them all those years. Now that's not the same, and so you're kind of piecing it together and getting information from people who didn't have them for as long, so that it makes it a little more challenging for the scouts. But ultimately, we still have to figure out a way to nail those makeups, figure out that part of it. You still want to know why. Why did a player leave and go to different schools? And so you want to answer those questions. Again, it's the same thing in high school, honestly, now. Like, again, we talked to a player that's been in multiple high schools and moved around. And so it's just a unique landscape that we're still figuring out, but we still have to make sure we focus on the makeup. And I would say our scouts do a really good job of that. Thanks. Yeah, whether it's Kirk Cousins or any other player, we have to really look at how is this going to help our team and how is this going to affect the Atlanta Falcons. And so not just with Kirk, with anybody, and all those decisions we make, that's what we have to look at. What's right for this football team.
What internally is y'all's evaluation so far?
Yeah, look, Kyle's a really talented player. He's done some really good things, and you can see, man, you can make a highlight tape and see all the good things that he's done. And we talked about that at the end of the season. We know there's a really high expectation for him. And so where we stand at this point, where Kyle, in his mind, this offseason, I'm going to do everything I can do to make sure I'm effective and I'm helping this team win. And the same with all of us in the building, with myself and everyone in the building, just like any other player. We're pouring into our players and making sure we're doing everything we can do. Again, I said after the season that when you take a player that high, we know there's a expectation, probably an unreal expectation for all those players, but we believe that Kyle's going to put everything he can do into it to be the best player he can for us, and we're going to do the same for him.
Have you talked to him recently? Like, how long can that go without communicating with him?
I don't know where those things come from, but we keep those things private. With any player, we're always, whether we're talking to the representation, so much respect for Mike McCartney, Kirk Cousins, all that, but we're going to keep those things private. Like, we're not going to talk about with any communication with them or with anybody else on our team.
You made it clear that he's going to continue to work with you guys. He's obviously disappointed once they was starter. But what leads you to be comfortable that he can be a good backup for Michael, that can be a good worker? If that's the fact.
We just have to do what's right for the Atlanta Falcons, and so I said after the season, that's where we stood at that point, and we just always have to do what's right for the Atlanta Falcons. It is unique. No, it is unique with that. So with that, there just has to be a high level of communication, and anything that happens, obviously everybody has to be on the same page with it. So we just have to handle that. But so much respect for obviously Kirk, Mike McCartney, but we'll just keep all those things private.
All right, thanks, guys.
Good. Thank you.